So, um, imagine for a second that you're just scrolling through your news feed on your phone.
Right, like we all do every day.
Exactly. And you're seeing all the usual stuff, the political scandals, the economic doom and gloom, maybe some random celebrity drama.
Yeah, the standard mix.
But then you just stop because you encounter someone who isn't like pitching a new startup, and they aren't running for local office. They're actually claiming to have a direct, completely unfiltered hotline to God.
Which definitely makes you pause.
Right. And they aren't just preaching. This person is offering a radical, completely alternative history of religion as we know it.
It definitely interrupts the endless scrolling. I mean, when someone claims to just bypass thousands of years of established theology with a direct modern-day revelation, it really demands a closer look.
Yeah, it really does. So, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're immersing ourselves in the teachings, the visions, and frankly, the genuinely staggering claims of a man named Narciso Olalo. And he presents himself to the world as a modern-day instrument of God. Our source material for this deep dive is this very unique stack of documents. We're looking at his personal writings, the actual transcripts of his speeches, and recorded accounts of his own visions. And these span from 2013 right up to October of 2024.
It's a massive timeline.
It is. And our mission today is to unpack his specific theological framework, examine his really razor-sharp critique of organized religion, and just dig into the underlying psychology of his message, to understand why it might resonate with people today.
And to set the stage for you listening, it's really crucial to establish our ground rules here. We are examining Narciso's claims purely as a fascinating sociological and theological text.
Right, exactly.
We're not here to validate his spiritual authority, and we aren't here to debunk it either. Our goal is just to analyze his arguments about faith, money, and power. We're maintaining an objective lens so we can really understand the architecture of the worldview he's building for his followers.
Yeah, and to understand that architecture, you really have to look at the foundation, which is his absolute primary grievance with modern religion. It's basically the engine driving his whole movement. And he illustrated this incredibly vividly in the recent vision he recorded on October 4th, 2024.
Yeah, the October 4th vision. It's highly cinematic, honestly, and deeply revealing about how he views his own mission. So in this account, Narciso finds himself standing in an open square, just shouting at the top of his lungs.
Just yelling.
Right, and he's publicly declaring that priests and pastors have been designated by God as the, quote, no one sinners.
Man, that's a remarkably heavy accusation to just hurl in a public square.
Yeah.
He's taking aim right at the top of the spiritual hierarchy.
He is, and what's particularly interesting is how the people in the vision react to him, or, well, don't react to him.
Right.
He notes that a catechist, so a religious teacher, walks right past him, just acting as if she didn't hear a single word, despite him yelling. Yeah, and he calls out to her, saying people like her won't believe the message God is sending for the second coming. And then a sacristan, someone who assists in church services, also walks right by, just ignoring him entirely and heading toward this large church where a priest is standing.
And the source material includes this moment where the voice of God speaks directly to Narciso, telling him essentially, don't worry about them. They aren't the only people in the world. Just keep doing what I commanded you to do. And God tells him that no priest or pastor can touch him because the power of God is against them.
Exactly. And following that divine reassurance, Narciso basically turns his back on the church structure, and he notices a totally different group of people. It's a crowd of men and women lined up in this really orderly fashion, almost like police trainees in uniform.
Okay.
And he focuses his attention on a tall man in the crowd who's wearing red overalls, and this is where he delivers a metaphor that sits at the very core of his entire philosophy.
Yes. This is the sardine analogy, and I find this so fascinating. So Narciso asks this man in the red overalls a hypothetical question. He says, imagine if I took your name, went to a local store, and bought sardines on credit, using your name, without asking your permission, and without you knowing. How would you feel when you found out?
And the man in the vision replies very simply that he'd be angry.
Right. And Narciso then delivers the punchline. He says that is exactly how God feels, because according to Narciso, that is exactly what the clergy are doing today. They are using God's name completely without God's permission to collect money from the people.
It's a huge claim.
It is. It's essentially like spiritual identity theft.
Yeah.
It's a critique of religious franchising where the local branch managers are aggressively collecting revenues and keeping the profits, but they're doing it entirely without the ultimate CDO's permission.
Spiritual identity theft. That's a great way to put it. And that analogy works so well because it takes these grand, intimidating theological concepts and just reduces them to a relatable, everyday financial grievance.
Yeah, everybody understands buying groceries on credit.
Right. Think about how effective that is psychologically. If you're someone struggling to pay bills, the massive opulent structures of institutional religion can feel incredibly alienating. And Narciso just taps into that exact alienation.
He's validating their frustration.
Exactly. He isn't engaging in some lofty debate over scripture. He's making a direct accusation of systemic fraud. He's framing the institution of modern religion as a predatory business model.
Because they're always asking for, tithes, donations, building funds.
All of it. Every single request for money. And he contrasts this alleged profiteering with his own divine mandate. He claims God told him to provide his services, so his healing, his preaching, absolutely free.
Wow. Free.
Yes. No collections, no hidden fees. So by setting up this really stark dichotomy, he positions himself not just as a prophet, but almost as an economic whistleblower. He's telling the listener, hey, you aren't a sinner for doubting the church. You're a victim who's being scammed.
It's such a brilliant populist tactic. Because, like you said, it validates the skepticism people might already be feeling. And he doesn't just stop at modern-day churches. If you look at how he views history, he takes this exact same economic theory and retroactively applies it to one of the most famous events in human history, the crucifixion of Jesus.
Yeah, this is where his theology radically diverges from traditional Christian teaching. I mean, he reconstructs the Passion of Christ through a purely economic lens.
Right. Narciso argues that Jesus wasn't killed for spiritual reasons at all. Like, we are universally taught the story of the crucifixion as this divine sacrifice for the sins of humanity. But Narciso claims that Jesus was simply walking through ancient villages, preaching corner to corner for free.
And that's the key. For free.
Exactly. Because he was gathering this massive following without charging them a single cent, he became a direct threat to the kings and the leaders of the era who were literally in the business of collecting taxes.
The pragmatism of this interpretation is just staggering. Narciso is suggesting that the local rulers looked at Jesus and realized, hey, if too many people follow this guy who operates entirely outside our financial system, our own revenue streams are going to dry up.
Right.
So to them, Jesus wasn't a spiritual threat. He was a market rival.
Well, wait, hold on. I have to push back on the mechanics of this claim.
Yeah.
I mean, he's essentially wiping away the entire historical record of Roman political involvement.
Right.
Not to mention the deep emotional and spiritual weight that literally billions of people attach to the Passion. He just waves all of that away and turns the foundational event of Christianity into a story about, tax evasion and market competition.
He fundamentally alters the narrative, yes. He states very clearly that he sees no other logical reason why Jesus would have been killed. To Narciso, the spiritual narratives we've been taught for millennia were intentionally altered, like they were added to or subtracted from by people in power specifically to hide that real underlying economic motive.
Okay? And the reason he does this becomes pretty obvious when you look at how he frames his own life. Because he draws this massive, flashing neon arrow pointing directly from Jesus' historical struggle straight to his own current situation in the Philippines.
Oh, absolutely. It creates a perfect historical parallel. Narciso claims that modern priests and pastors hate him and actually want him dead for the exact same reason the ancient kings wanted Jesus dead.
Because he threatens their money.
Yes. His message is that God shouldn't be monetized. If people actually believe that, they stop giving money to the church. Therefore, he is a direct threat to the modern clergy's income.
And the transcripts show him getting incredibly specific about this financial accusation. He talks about how church leaders are constantly asking members for money just to pay off the church's car loans.
Yeah.
He mentions that high-ranking clergy actually hold massive investments in mining stocks and banks.
Yeah, that they're acting as major stockholders in various corporations.
Exactly. All while asking the average working-class person for their hard-earned money.
So by turning Jesus into an economic disruptor, Narciso accomplishes something highly strategic here. He completely validates his own feelings of persecution. If the religious establishment rejects him, well, it isn't because his theology is incorrect. It's because his economics are too dangerous.
Right.
He aligns his own struggle with the historical struggle of Jesus, which provides this massive boost to his own credibility in the eyes of his followers.
Okay, so if we follow this internal logic, a really massive question arises. If Narciso believes the established churches are inherently corrupt financial institutions, and he believes they literally altered the history of Jesus to protect their wealth, how does he justify using the Bible?
Well, the answer is he doesn't. He throws it out.
Yeah. For a man who preaches constantly about God and Jesus, his rejection of the Bible is perhaps his most controversial stance. I mean, Narciso explicitly states that salvation is not found in the Bible.
And logically, if he believes the church altered history to hide their financial motives, he kind of has to reject the primary text they produced and curated over the centuries.
Right, it's the only way his theory holds up.
Exactly. That is the necessary conclusion of his economic theory. He argues the Bible is just a story of the past. And beyond the likelihood of it being manipulated, his deeper philosophical point is that simply knowing a historical story cannot save you.
Memorizing what happened 2,000 years ago doesn't just grant you a pass to heaven.
No. For Narciso, salvation is entirely dependent on your present actions, on how you navigate the world today.
And he backs up this rejection of traditional scripture with what I can only describe as a time-traveling logic puzzle. It's totally designed to completely dismantle the concept of exclusive religions. So in the source material, he specifically targets three major groups in his region: the Catholic Church, Iglesia Ni Cristo, and Apollo Quiboloy's movement.
Right. And to give you listening some context on those regional references, the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or INC, is a massive, highly influential, homegrown Christian denomination in the Philippines, and they claim to be the one true church. And Apollo Quiboloy is a deeply controversial religious figure who leads a totally different movement, and he's made headlines for literally claiming to be the appointed son of God.
Wow. Okay, so Narciso looks at leaders like Quiboloy, who claims his specific path is the only way to salvation, and Narciso just does the basic math. He points out that Quiboloy is a modern man. So if his specific religion, which was founded just a few decades ago, is the only way to avoid hell, what happened to the millions and millions of human beings who lived and died before Quiboloy was even born?
It is a devastatingly simple question.
Right. If your religion was founded 5 years ago, or 50 years ago, or even a few hundred years ago, what happens to all the people who existed for thousands of years prior? Did they all just go to hell in a technicality because they had the bad luck to be born in the wrong century?
Yeah, and Narciso even applies this to the foundational figures of Christianity just to hammer the point home. He points out, Jesus wasn't a Catholic, Mary wasn't born again, John the Baptist wasn't a member of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, nor was he a Muslim.
So why is this specific logic puzzle so effective for his listeners? Like, what is the psychological mechanism happening here?
It works because it basically weaponizes common sense against complex, intimidating theology.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because most people don't have degrees in divinity, right? They might feel entirely unequipped to debate a priest on the nuanced interpretation of ancient Greek or Hebrew scriptures, but everyone understands basic chronology.
Right, time is time.
Exactly. By framing the argument this way, Narciso gives the layperson intellectual permission to dismiss massive, powerful institutions. It really democratizes faith.
It shifts the entire burden of salvation away from joining the right club.
It removes the institutional gatekeeping entirely. By dissolving the arbitrary boundaries of specific religious denominations, Narciso makes salvation immediate and personal. You don't need a membership card, and you don't need a middleman. You are judged on what you do today.
But that brings us to the ultimate question. If you are a listener standing in that open square, and Narciso has just successfully dismantled your trust in the church and the Bible and exclusive denominations, what is he actually telling you to do? What is his replacement framework?
Well, he replaces the dense dogma of established religions with a highly streamlined formula, which he calls the 3 Ps. And he claims this formula dates back to a very specific message he received from God in 2013, with strict instructions to repeat it constantly to the people.
Okay, let's break down these 3 Ps. The first is pagbabago, which translates to a change in wrong beliefs.
Right. And this first step is effectively a deprogramming phase. It's the conscious act of unlearning the institutional dogma he spent so much time critiquing.
Letting go of the old stuff.
Exactly. You have to let go of the idea that paying a tithe or sitting in a specific building on Sunday is what saves you.
Okay, then the second P is pagsisi, which is repentance for your sins. And that Feels fairly standard for most religious frameworks. But the third P is where it gets highly specific to his movement. Lubos na paniniwala, which means complete and absolute belief in Narciso himself as God's chosen instrument.
Yeah. He's asking for a monumental leap of faith from his followers here, having just told them, hey, don't trust priests or pastors. He's now asking them to place their absolute trust in him.
And he knows that's a big ask, which is why he claims to have the empirical evidence to back it up. He claims God granted him a divine power of mind.
And according to his writings, this power of mind allows him to perform a really wide range of miracles. He claims the ability to heal people across the board mentally, physically, and spiritually. He talks about curing tumors, helping people who couldn't walk, and alleviating severe psychological distress.
And crucially, he claims to do all of this absolutely free of charge. No donations accepted. Which maintains that stark contrast with the franchise managers he criticized earlier.
Right. And his claimed abilities go far beyond just physical healing. He asserts that he can literally see into a person's soul and identify their hidden sins, whether they're living or dead.
Oh.
Yeah. He even claims the ability to foresee tragedies and predict exactly when a person is going to die.
And the audacity of his claims really peaks in the transcripts, when he just casually notes that he does everything Jesus did, with one single exception. He admits he hasn't raised anyone from the dead yet.
Yet.
Right, he follows that up by saying maybe he'll do that when the last days are closer.
He uses these claimed miracles as the undeniable proof required for that third P, complete belief in him. His argument is pretty straightforward. An ordinary person couldn't cure a tumor with their mind, therefore he must be operating with the literal power of God.
But you know, there is a very dark undercurrent to all of this. He offers free healing, yes, but he balances it with truly terrifying apocalyptic stakes. He's not just offering a nice, alternative spiritual lifestyle here. He is dealing in the end of the world.
The visual he uses to describe the final judgment is incredibly bleak. Narciso claims God revealed to him the exact ratio of those who will be saved versus those who will perish. He says the number of people who will be saved is equivalent to a single glass of gravel.
Just one glass.
One glass. Meanwhile, the number of people who will burn in hell is like an entire beach of sand.
Man. It creates a fascinating psychological tension. On one hand, he heavily criticizes traditional religions for using scare tactics and the threat of hell to extract money from people. But on the other hand, he's employing an existential threat that is arguably just as terrifying. If almost everyone on Earth is part of that beach of sand, the urgency to adopt his 3 Ps becomes absolute.
It's a classic rhetorical strategy to build insular group cohesion. Basically, the outside world is doomed. Safety is only found here with this specific message.
And amidst all of this incredibly heavy material, the damnation of the global clergy, the economic history of the crucifixion, the beach of sand, there's one specific detail right at the end of his October 2024 vision that feels almost completely out of place.
Oh, the ending of that recorded vision is a total masterclass in tonal whiplash.
It really is. So imagine this scene. He's standing in the square, the crowd of trainees in uniform is applauding him. He has just delivered the sardine analogy, and he's fully embracing his role as a divine prophet. And then he writes that he abruptly wakes up from the vision simply because he desperately needed to pee.
It is the most mundane bodily detail you could possibly include.
Right. Why include it? If you are a man trying to convince the world that you are the ultimate instrument of the divine, holding the keys to salvation, why undercut that grand narrative with the fact that you needed to use the bathroom?
Because, paradoxically, that mundane detail is exactly what adds a vital layer of authenticity to his account. Think about the mechanics of creating a myth. If you were sitting down to completely fabricate a story designed to make yourself look like an infallible, ethereal God-man, you would end the vision with a dramatic ascension into the clouds, right? Or being bathed in a blinding golden light. You wouldn't end it with a bladder issue.
So by including the bathroom detail, he actually grounds this highly mystical, otherworldly experience in gritty, undeniable human reality.
Exactly. Historically, if you read the personal diaries of famous mystics and prophets, this interception of the divine and the physical is very common. The sheer humanity of the detail makes the reader feel like they aren't reading a polished, focus-grouped marketing brochure from a megachurch. They're reading a raw, unedited diary entry from a real guy who just happens to be experiencing something extraordinary.
It silently communicates, hey, I am not a polished religious CEO. I am just a normal person chosen for this task. It totally reinforces his entire anti-institutional brand.
It's highly effective storytelling, whether it's intentional or not.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground today on Narciso Olalo. Let's just trace the arc of what we've unpacked here. We started with his fierce, populist critique of monetized religion, anchored by that deeply relatable sardine analogy, the idea of clergy using God's name to buy things on credit.
Right. And from there, we explored how he scales that economic critique all the way back to the crucifixion, framing Jesus not as a spiritual sacrifice, but as a market rival assassinated to protect ancient tax revenues.
Then we looked at his time-traveling logic puzzle, which uses simple chronology to dismantle the idea of exclusive, gate-kept denominations and justifies his absolute rejection of the Bible. And finally, we examined his own stark framework for salvation. The 3 Ps, his claims of free miraculous healing, and that terrifying urgent ratio of the glass of gravel versus the beach of sand.
And when you take a step back and look at Narciso's entire worldview, the real value in exploring a deep dive like this isn't about whether you convert to his specific movement.
No, not at all.
The value lies in the mirror. His arguments hold up to our own society. He forces us to examine the mechanics of our own trust. Think about the institutions you interact with or the authorities you listen to. Are you outsourcing your critical thinking to large organizations simply because they have a 1,000-year history? Or because they operate out of grand, beautiful buildings?
Right, are we just assuming the local managers actually have the CEO's permission?
Exactly. He forces us to question the complacency of inherited belief, challenging us to look at the economic and power structures underlying the things we just take for granted.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating new question to mull over. Narciso is operating in an era where anyone can broadcast their message globally. In the past, prophets gathered followers in town squares or remote deserts. But today, the internet has completely democratized the concept of prophethood. If anyone with a smartphone can post an unpolished video claiming to have a direct hotline to the divine, how will future generations, or even us today, distinguish between a genuine visionary and someone who simply understands how to hack the algorithm? When faith meets the viral feed, how do we decide who is actually speaking for the divine?
That is the ultimate modern test of discernment.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning what you read, keep looking for the underlying structures, and we will see you next time.